It was a sunny afternoon at the private airstrip, and all eyes were on the woman walking confidently toward the sleek black jet. But as she reached the staircase, the flight attendant blocked her path, smirking as she said, "Ma'am, this jet isn't for you." Confused, the woman pulled out her credentials, but the crew didn't even bother to look. They laughed, whispered, and dismissed her as if she didn't belong. Little did they know, the woman they just humiliated wasn't just a passenger. She was the owner of the jet, and what happened next would change their lives forever. Before we jump into today's story, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. If you love powerful stories of justice, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share, so you never miss what's coming next. Now, let's get started. Meet Maya Carter, a name that echoed power and prestige in the corporate world, but on this particular day her appearance seemed to overshadow her reputation. Dressed in an elegant yet understated black pantsuit, Maya carried herself with a quiet confidence, her natural curls framing her sharp, determined face. To onlookers, she might have seemed like just another ambitious traveler, but beneath that calm exterior was a woman who had built her empire from nothing, an empire big enough to afford the jet now parked on the tarmac. Maya wasn't born into wealth or privilege. Growing up in the heart of Atlanta, she had faced poverty, systemic barriers, and prejudice at every turn. But instead of breaking her, those challenges forged her into an unstoppable force. Through relentless grit, she climbed the corporate ladder, shattered glass ceilings, and eventually founded her own global consultancy. Her private jet wasn't just a symbol of her success, it was a testament to every battle she'd fought and won. But today, as she approached her own aircraft, Maya didn't know she was about to face a humiliation unlike anything she'd experienced before. One that would test her composure, her patience, and most importantly, her sense of justice. As Maya reached the base of the staircase, she was met with an icy glare from the flight attendant, a tall woman with a rigid posture and an air of superiority. "Excuse me, ma'am," she said curtly, stepping in front of Maya. "This jet is reserved for private use. You can't board." Maya blinked, momentarily stunned. "I'm aware. This is my jet," she replied, her voice calm but firm as she extended her ID badge. The flight attendant barely glanced at it before shaking her head with a patronizing smile. "I'm sorry, but I can't let you on without proper clearance." Her tone was laced with doubt, as if the very idea of Maya owning such a luxurious aircraft was laughable. Behind the attendant, two male crew members whispered to each other, their stifled chuckles unmistakable. Maya's chest tightened, but she kept her composure. "Perhaps you'd like to verify with the management team," she said, stepping aside to allow them to confirm her identity. But instead of addressing her professionally, the attendant turned to her colleagues and muttered loud enough for Maya to hear, "I think she's lost." The men laughed outright this time, one of them adding, "Maybe she's trying to hitch a ride." Maya's hands clenched at her sides, her mind racing. It wasn't the first time she'd been underestimated or judged by her appearance, but the blatant disrespect cut deeper than she expected. "Check again," Maya said sharply, her voice slicing through their laughter. But her demand was met with a dismissive wave of the attendant's hand. "We don't have time for games. Please step aside before we call security." Maya's jaw tightened, her pulse quickening. Little did they know, she wasn't just about to prove them wrong. She was about to deliver a lesson they'd never forget. Maya stood there, silent for a moment, her piercing gaze fixed on the attendant. The crew's smug expressions only fueled her resolve. Without saying another word, Maya pulled out her phone and dialed a number. "Good afternoon, Mr. Hayes," she said, her tone steady but commanding. "I'm standing outside my jet, and your staff seems confused about who I am. Care to enlighten them?" The mention of Mr. Hayes, the director of operations at the airstrip, caused the flight attendant to freeze. Her smile faltered, her eyes darting nervously toward Maya's phone. Within seconds, a voice boomed from the other end of the line, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Ms. Carter, my sincerest apologies. I'll handle this immediately." Maya didn't break her gaze as she handed the phone to the flight attendant. "You might want to take this," she said coolly. The woman's face drained of color as she reluctantly accepted the phone. Yes, sir," she stammered, her arrogance crumbling with every word she heard. Behind her, the two male crew members exchanged worried glances, their earlier confidence now replaced by uncertainty. As the conversation ended, the flight attendant handed the phone back, her hands trembling slightly. I didn't realize," she began, but Maya raised a hand to stop her. "Oh, you didn't realize?" Maya said, her voice sharp enough to cut through the tension. "That's the problem, isn't it? You didn't bother to realize. You assumed." Before anyone could respond, Maya stepped past them and onto the jet, her presence now impossible to ignore. But this wasn't over, not by a long shot. Maya had made it clear who she was, but the lesson she planned to teach them would be far more unforgettable. As Maya settled into her seat on the jet, the hum of the engines filled the cabin, but the tension from the confrontation outside still lingered. She pulled out her laptop, her fingers flying over the keyboard as she accessed the crew manifest for her private fleet. The names of the flight attendant and her colleagues stared back at her, each detail painting a clearer picture of the people who had dared to humiliate her. Her gaze hardened. This wasn't just about her anymore, it was about accountability. If they treated her, the owner, with such blatant disrespect, how were they treating others? Clients, colleagues, staff? Maya's instincts told her this wasn't an isolated incident. Moments later, she made a call to her personal assistant, Clara, a meticulous woman with a knack for uncovering the truth. "Clara, I need you to dig into the crew assigned to my jet today. I want their records, feedback from other passengers, and any complaints filed against them. Leave no stone unturned." Clara's reply was swift and efficient. "Understood, Miss Carter. I'll get back to you within the hour." As the jet taxied down the runway, Maya's thoughts churned. What she had witnessed wasn't just incompetence, it was arrogance fueled by bias, the kind that could ruin her company's reputation if left unchecked. By the time the jet reached cruising altitude, Clara had already sent her a comprehensive report. Maya scanned the files, her suspicions confirmed. The crew had a history of complaints, unprofessional behavior, dismissive attitudes, and even accusations of discrimination. Somehow, these reports had been buried, overlooked by those who were supposed to enforce standards. Maya leaned back in her seat, her jaw tightening as a plan began to form. She wasn't just going to confront the crew, she was going to uncover every layer of negligence that had allowed them to act with impunity. The next step was clear. She needed to speak to other employees, investigate how this behavior had been allowed to persist, and ensure it never happened again. But first, she would give the crew one last chance to explain themselves, though she already knew the confrontation wouldn't end in their favor. As the jet touched down at its destination, Maya's heart was steady, but her mind was sharp as a blade. She had already arranged for the crew to be summoned to the private hangar for a meeting they wouldn't soon forget. When the 3 crew members entered the sleek conference room, their earlier smugness was replaced with unease. The flight attendant, who had led the humiliation, glanced nervously at her colleagues, searching for reassurance that wasn't there. Maya sat at the head of the table, calm yet commanding. In front of her was a neatly stacked file, the damning evidence Clara had gathered. "Take a seat," she said, her voice cool and measured. The silence was suffocating as the crew sat down, their discomfort palpable. Maya wasted no time. "I've reviewed your records," she began, flipping open the file. "Dismissive attitudes, ignored complaints, and repeated incidents of bias. You've been given chance after chance to uphold the standards of this company, yet here we are." The flight attendant attempted to defend herself, her voice shaky. "Miss Carter, it was a misunderstanding." Maya cut her off, her tone firm. "Number. What happened on that tarmac wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a deliberate act of disrespect. You didn't judge me based on my credentials or my position. You judged me based on what you thought I looked like. A woman who didn't belong. The crew shifted uncomfortably, their expressions ranging from shame to fear. Maya leaned forward, her voice low but searing. Do you know how many women, how many people of color, are made to feel like they don't belong? Every time you let your bias dictate your actions, you're not just insulting me, you're perpetuating a cycle that destroys opportunities for others. The weight of her words hung in the air, suffocating and undeniable. But Maya wasn't finished. She slid the file across the table. These complaints have been ignored for too long. I take full accountability for the oversight, but rest assured, it ends today. She stood, her gaze steady and unrelenting. Effective immediately. You are all relieved of your duties. Your actions are not reflective of the values I've built this company on, and I will not allow them to tarnish its future. The room was deathly silent as the reality of her words sank in. The flight attendant opened her mouth to protest, but Maya raised a hand. There's no room for negotiation. You made your choices, and now you face the consequences. As they were escorted out, Maya felt a sense of vindication, but she knew this was only the beginning. There were deeper changes to be made within her company, and she was ready to lead the charge. As the door closed behind the dismissed crew, Maya stood alone in the conference room, gazing out of the window at her jet parked on the tarmac. The sun was setting, casting a warm glow over the scene, a stark contrast to the cold injustice she had just confronted. But Maya wasn't one to stop at addressing symptoms. She immediately convened her leadership team, outlining a plan to implement stricter hiring protocols, regular diversity training, and an anonymous feedback system for all staff and passengers. Accountability, she said firmly, must start from the top. Over the following weeks, stories of Maya's decisive actions spread across her company and beyond. Employees, especially those who had once felt marginalized, began to see her as more than just a leader. They saw her as a symbol of justice and integrity. Maya's actions also sparked a broader conversation in her industry about bias, representation, and the importance of holding people accountable for their actions. She didn't seek the spotlight, but her story resonated with countless people who had experienced similar treatment. Reflecting on the incident, Maya shared her thoughts in a company-wide message. Respect isn't about titles or appearances. It's about treating every individual with dignity and fairness. When we fail to do that, we fail ourselves and the values we claim to uphold. True leadership means standing against prejudice, no matter how uncomfortable or inconvenient it might be. Justice isn't just about correcting wrongs. It's about building a foundation where wrongs have no place to begin with. Maya's message left an indelible mark on those who heard it, reminding them that power is most meaningful when it is used to uplift others. As for Maya, the incident didn't weaken her resolve, it strengthened it. She vowed to continue dismantling barriers, not just for herself, but for those who would come after her. In the end, the lesson was clear. When faced with adversity, don't just rise above it. Use it as a platform to create change. And so, the woman who had been denied boarding her own jet became a beacon of resilience and justice, proving that no amount of prejudice could ever ground her soaring spirit. Thank you for watching. Maya's story reminds us that standing up for what's right can create lasting change. Whether it's overcoming adversity or challenging injustice, your voice matters. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment with your thoughts on the story. Let's keep this conversation going. And remember, sharing these stories helps spread the message of justice and fairness, one act of courage at a time. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it today.